There is an old saying that carries within it a warning most people learn too late. Not everything that gives off light is fire. Some things shine only to blind. We are taught from an early age to move toward what is bright, toward warmth, toward brilliance, toward the people who seem to radiate something that makes our own world feel more alive in their presence. We are taught to trust the feeling of being drawn to someone, to interpret the pull of attraction and fascination as evidence of something genuine and good. And most of the time, this instinct serves us well. Most of the people who enter our lives with warmth and interest and apparent understanding are exactly what they appear to be: human beings. Imperfect and complicated, but genuinely oriented toward connection rather than extraction. But there exists a category of encounter, rarer than our fears might suggest, but far more common than our optimism would prefer, in which the person who arrives in your life as a friend, a teacher, a confidant, or a soulmate is not there to grow with you. They are there for something altogether different, something that they may not even be fully conscious of themselves, something that, by the time you recognize it clearly, has already cost you more than you knew you were paying. They are there for your energy, your clarity, your sense of self, the specific quality of your inner life that, in their presence, begins slowly, imperceptibly, in ways that are easy to rationalize and difficult to name, to diminish. The 5 signs we are going to explore today are not dramatic. They rarely announce themselves with obvious cruelty or transparent manipulation. They work through subtlety, through the gradual normalization of dynamics that each individually might seem manageable or even reasonable. It is their accumulation, the pattern they form over time, that reveals what is actually happening by the end of this conversation. You will have a framework for recognizing this pattern in its early stages, when recognition is still protection rather than merely explanation, and you will understand, in terms that go deeper than behavioral advice, what these signs reveal about the specific psychological dynamics at work and what they require of you in response. 1. The surgical distortion of reality. Gaslighting, the most immediately disorienting feature of the kind of relationship we are describing, is not what is done to you overtly. It is what is done to your relationship with your own perception. Gaslighting, the term, derives from a 1944 film in which a husband systematically manipulates his wife into doubting her own sanity. Is among the most psychologically damaging forms of interpersonal manipulation, precisely because it does not target what you think or feel. It targets the capacity you rely on to assess what you think and feel. It attacks not the conclusions of your inner processing, but the process itself. And in doing so, it produces a specific and deeply destabilizing result. You begin to experience your own mind as an unreliable instrument. The person who employs gaslighting rarely does so through obvious, easily identifiable lies. The crude lie is too fragile, too easily checked against external reality, too vulnerable to contradiction. The sophisticated manipulation operates through something considerably more difficult to defend against: the subtle, consistent recontextualization of events. The slight adjustment of what was said, introduced so naturally that you find yourself wondering whether you missed the reframing of your emotional response, your hurt, your anger, your confusion, as evidence of instability, rather than as a reasonable reaction to what actually occurred. You're too sensitive. You're imagining things. That's not what happened. You always do this. I'm worried about you. You've been so irrational lately. Each of these, in isolation, could be an honest expression of a different perspective. People do sometimes misremember. Emotional responses are sometimes disproportionate. The honest acknowledgement of these possibilities is part of genuine relationship. But the gaslighting pattern is not characterized by isolated instances of honest disagreement. It is characterized by the systematic, directional quality of the doubt it produces. The doubt always moves in the same direction, away from your perception and toward theirs. The events you remember clearly are consistently the ones being questioned. The emotional responses being pathologized are consistently yours. The version of reality being established as authoritative is consistently theirs. The cumulative effect of sustained exposure to this pattern is one of the most profound forms of psychological harm available, not because it produces a single dramatic injury, but because it erodes the most fundamental resource you possess: the trust in your own perception that is the foundation of every other form of psychological functioning. When you cannot trust your own memory, you look for external confirmation of what you experienced. When you cannot trust your own emotional responses, you look for external guidance about what you should feel. When your own inner sense of what is real has been systematically questioned and undermined, the person who has been doing the questioning becomes, by default, the authority on what is real, and once that authority has been established, once the relationship has been structured so that their perception is the reliable one and yours is the suspicious one, the dependency is complete. Not a chosen dependency, not a conscious surrender, but the structural outcome of a process that was designed from its beginning to produce exactly this result. The first defense against this pattern is the simplest and the most difficult: the practice of trusting your own perception, not rigidly, not with the refusal to consider other perspectives, but with the foundational conviction that your experience of events is real, your emotional responses are data, and the systematic questioning of both by a single person deserves attention rather than accommodation. 2. Control beneath the mask of compassion. False empathy. Genuine empathy is among the most valuable qualities available in human relationship. The capacity to actually feel into another person's experience, to set aside your own perspective sufficiently to genuinely encounter theirs, is the foundation of real intimacy, real understanding, real connection. It is what makes it possible to be truly known by another person and to truly know them. But empathy, like every genuine human quality, has a counterfeit, and the counterfeit is, by design, nearly indistinguishable from the genuine article, at least in its early presentation, because the counterfeit is not constructed from indifference to your experience. It is constructed from extremely close attention to your experience. The person deploying false empathy knows, often with remarkable precision, what you are feeling, what you need, what your deepest vulnerabilities are, and what kind of response would produce the experience of being genuinely understood. The difference is not in the information gathered, it is in what the information is used for. Genuine empathy uses the understanding of your inner world to connect with you, to reduce the distance between two separate people, to create the experience of being genuinely encountered rather than merely observed. It is oriented toward you. Its goal is your sense of being known. False empathy uses the understanding of your inner world to map you, to identify the specific emotional leverage points, the precise vulnerabilities, the exact needs that, once identified, can be addressed selectively in service of a different agenda. It is oriented toward the person deploying it. Its goal is their ability to manage your responses. The person who tells you that no one understands you like they do, who emphasizes, with particular insistence, the unique quality of their attunement to you and the inadequacy of everyone else's, is making a claim that genuine connection never needs to make. Genuine understanding does not require the comparative diminishment of all other relationships. It does not need to establish itself as uniquely irreplaceable. It simply is present, warm, without the competitive framing that needs others to be less in order to be more. When the expression of care consistently includes the implicit or explicit message that you are uniquely dependent on this specific person for genuine understanding, that others do not see you as they do, that you would be lost without this particular connection, the care is performing a function that genuine care does not require. It is constructing the specific psychological architecture of dependency, and dependency, once established, is a form of control, not the crude control of direct command, but the sophisticated control of having made yourself structurally necessary to someone's sense of being understood. Once you believe that this person is the only one who truly sees you, you will do considerable things to maintain their seeing. You will accommodate their needs at the expense of your own. You will suppress the discomfort they cause because the discomfort of losing their understanding feels greater. You will remain even when everything in you is registering that something is wrong, because the alternative, the loss of the only person who really gets you, feels unbearable. This is the chain, and it was built, link by link, from the material of your genuine need to be known. 3. The invisible leak. Energy vampirism. There is a form of depletion that is very difficult to name, because it does not arise from a single identifiable event. It is not the depletion of a particular conflict or a specific demand. It is the cumulative, structural depletion that comes from being in sustained proximity to someone whose relationship to your energy is extractive rather than reciprocal. You may have experienced this without having had the language for it. The specific quality of exhaustion after certain interactions, not the pleasant tiredness of genuine emotional engagement, but something hollower, more disorienting. the sense of having left something behind that you cannot quite account for, the awareness, arriving sometimes hours later, that you feel less like yourself than you did before. The energy vampire, and the term, though it has become somewhat cliched, points towards something genuinely real, is not always someone who is obviously demanding or obviously difficult. They may be charming, engaging, apparently warm. The extraction often occurs not through explicit demand, but through the specific structure of the relationship, the way it is always oriented toward their needs, their crises, their emotional weather, while yours occupy a territory that is acknowledged in theory but never quite reaches the center of attention in practice. Their life is organized around emergencies, not manufactured ones. Necessarily though, sometimes those too, but a continuous supply of situations that require your attention, your support, your emotional investment, and the situations are genuinely distressing, which makes the claim on your resources feel legitimate. You are not being selfish to be exhausted by someone else's genuine pain. You are responding appropriately. But genuine pain, in genuine relationship, moves. It has phases. It develops. The person in genuine difficulty takes in the support offered, and eventually, gradually, moves from needing it to not needing it as urgently. The relationship has reciprocal phases, periods when you need more, periods when they need more, but an overall quality of mutual flow. That the energy vampire's crises do not move in this way. They recycle. The same categories of distress recur with remarkable consistency, refreshed with new details but organized around the same fundamental demand: your attention, your reassurance, your emotional labor. And the support provided never quite resolves the distress, it only ever temporarily reduces it, until the next crisis. Meanwhile, your own inner life, your needs, your challenges, your emotional weather occupies the margins, not because you are prohibited from bringing it forward, but because the space for it never quite materializes. The conversation always seems to return, with a kind of gravitational inevitability. To them, this is not a relationship between two inner lives. It is a one-directional transfer, your light flowing steadily into their darkness, with nothing flowing the other way, and the depletion it produces is not incidental. It is the mechanism for chaotic attachment, constant inconsistency and isolation. The psychological mechanism that produces the deepest and most durable attachment is not counterintuitively consistent warmth. Consistent warmth produces security, the stable, trusting, comfortable connection that allows genuine intimacy to develop over time. The mechanism that produces the deepest attachment, the kind that becomes difficult to leave even when leaving is clearly necessary, is intermittent reinforcement, the alternation of warmth and withdrawal, the unpredictable cycling between the version of the person that makes you feel seen and valued, and the version that is distant, cold, or openly critical, the relationship that is wonderful and then suddenly, inexplicably, not, and then wonderful again. This pattern, whether deployed consciously or not, produces something in the nervous system that is closer to addiction than to love. The unpredictability of the positive experiences makes them, neurologically, more powerful than consistent ones would be. The same mechanism that makes variable reward schedules more compelling than fixed ones. The principle that makes gambling psychologically addictive operates in the intermittent relationship. You never know when the warmth is coming, which means you are always oriented toward it, always monitoring for its arrival, always in the specific state of watchful anticipation that makes the reward, when it comes, feel disproportionately significant. And you are always, between the warm phases, doing the work of trying to understand what you did wrong, what shifted, what you could do differently to bring back the version of them that felt so good. This internal labor, the constant attempt to decode the cycling, to identify the variable that would stabilize it, keeps you oriented entirely toward them. Your inner life becomes organized around the project of managing their emotional weather, and you call this intimacy. Alongside the cycling, the isolation proceeds, quietly, incrementally, through a series of small moves that each seem reasonable in isolation. The slight tension when you mention spending time with certain friends, the framing of your other relationships as insufficiently understanding they don't really get you the way I do. The gradual accumulation of moments in which choosing them over your social world was the path of least resistance, until the pattern is established without any single choice having felt decisive. The isolation serves the dependency. The fewer genuine connections you have, the more completely you depend on this single relationship for your experience of being known and valued. and the more you depend on it, the more you will tolerate to maintain it. Their true face is usually visible in exactly two contexts: when they believe no one is watching, and in how they treat people from whom they have nothing to gain. These moments, the unguarded interactions, the casual treatment of people who offer them no advantage, reveal the character beneath the performance with a clarity that no amount of charm can permanently obscure. 5. The silent erosion of self. Identity loss. We arrive at the most dangerous sign of all, the one that is most difficult to recognize, because it is most thoroughly normalized by the time it has progressed to the point of genuine damage. It is the sign that, by the time most people name it, has already altered something in them that will require significant work to recover. It is the loss of self, not the dramatic, sudden loss that would be easily recognizable, but the slow, incremental, almost imperceptible erosion that proceeds through 1,000 small accommodations, each of which seemed reasonable, even admirable, in the moment it was made. The hobby you stopped pursuing because it produced tension. The friend you stopped seeing because the relationship around that friendship became complicated. The opinion you stopped expressing because the response to it was consistently discouraging. The way of dressing, of speaking, of inhabiting your own personality, that gradually shifted in the direction of what was acceptable in this relationship, what was welcomed, what did not produce the particular quality of disapproval or distance that you had learned to navigate around. From the outside, this process can look like growth, like the natural evolution of a person in a significant relationship, the softening of some edges, the development of new interests, the influence that all genuine intimacy has on its participants. These are real processes, and they are not inherently concerning. The distinction, and it is a critical one, is directional. Genuine growth in relationship is more. You influence them, they influence you, and both of you are becoming more fully yourselves in the process, not less. The change is additive. You are gaining complexity, gaining depth, gaining the specific qualities that genuine encounter with another person produces. The erosion is subtractive. You are not gaining, you are surrendering. Each accommodation has reduced something rather than added to it, and the cumulative direction is not toward greater fullness, but toward a specific shape, the shape that is most acceptable to the person who has been. Gradually, defining what acceptable means. When you look in the mirror and find the reflection unfamiliar, when the person looking back at you seems quieter than you remember, smaller, less sure of what they think and feel and want, the instinct may be to interpret this as peace, as the letting go of the ego's noise, as the mature acceptance of someone who has learned not to insist so loudly on their own perspective. But peace looks different from the inside than this. Genuine peace is expansive. It creates more room, not less. The person who has genuinely arrived at inner peace feels more like themselves, not less. They are more confident in their own perception, not less. They take up the space that is genuinely theirs, without apology and without the persistent anxiety of someone who has learned that their natural self is too much. What you are looking at in the mirror, if the reflection is unfamiliar in the way we are describing, is not peace. It is the face of a self that has been progressively domesticated, shaped, through sustained pressure and subtle manipulation, into a form that is more manageable for someone else. A soul that has been tamed, and the recognition of this, painful as it is, disorienting as it is, grief-laden as it inevitably is not the end of something. It is the beginning, because the self that was there before the erosion began is not gone. It has been covered, compressed, shaped into a form that was required by someone else's needs, but it is present, underneath the accommodation, waiting with the specific patience of something that knows it is real even when it cannot currently be expressed. The recovery of it begins, not with dramatic action, but with the simplest, most demanding of practices. The willingness to ask, in each small choice, what you actually want, not what is acceptable, not what will prevent conflict, not what will maintain the relationship in the form it currently takes, but what you, the actual you that has been waiting beneath the accommodations, genuinely want. That question, asked honestly and answered honestly, is the beginning of the long, gradual, deeply worthwhile work of coming home to yourself. We have examined today 5 of the most significant signs that someone in your life may be operating as an extractive presence rather than a nourishing one. The surgical distortion of reality that makes you doubt your own perception. The false empathy that maps your vulnerabilities in service of your dependency. The invisible energy drain that leaves you consistently depleted without clear explanation. the chaotic attachment and deliberate isolation that make the relationship feel inescapable, and the silent, cumulative erosion of the self that is, ultimately, what all of these dynamics are working toward. These signs are worth knowing, not to produce paranoia. Genuine connection is real and worth pursuing with your whole heart, not to make you suspicious of everyone who offers care and understanding, but to give you the specific, honest, clearly articulated framework for recognizing the difference between someone who is genuinely oriented toward your growth and someone who is oriented toward something else entirely. Not all that glitters is fire. Some things shine only to blind. The light that genuinely warms you is the light that leaves you feeling more like yourself, not less, more clear, not more confused, more grounded in your own perception, not less trusting of it, more connected to the people and activities and values that make up the genuine texture of your life, not more dependent on a single relationship for your sense of being known. Trust that light, protect it, and be willing when the evidence accumulates with sufficient consistency to name, honestly, the light that only blinds. The self that has been waiting beneath the accommodations is still there, and it has been patient long enough.